Our next panel is a very interesting one, and I would like to begin it with a quote. Being a lawyer is not merely a vocation, it is a public trust, and each one of us has an obligation to give back to our communities. With that, I introduce my next panel, which is named Fireside Chat with Ms. Sharanya. I invite Ms. Sharanya on the stage. Ms. Sharanya is a partner at Lakshmi Kumar and Sridharan. She handles commercial and regulatory disputes for over 15 years. She is an advocate on record and regularly appears before the Supreme Court of India. We also have Ashima ma'am here. I would like to invite her on the stage. Ashima ma'am reprised her role as a managing editor at BW Legal World, BW Business World in December 2023. Formerly, Ashima ma'am managed practice innovation at law offices of Panang and Babu. She was also the managing editor at BW Legal World online platform, and she has published many articles as well. She has a very strong background and also has a lot of experience. We would like to learn from you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction. I didn't know so much about myself, I think. Sharanya, a warm welcome. And, I think the audience has gone for a short break, but then of what we have, we hope all of you will enjoy this conversation. This is a fireside chat with Sharanya. A quick question to the audience. How many of you know what a fireside chat really is? Yes, please.
That's like we do among our friends. We just sit beside a bonfire and we discuss.
Exactly. So let's imagine there's a fire right here, of which, we're just going to sit around it and have a discussion with Sharanya, a warm discussion. So let me also begin.
Ashima, whenever I've spoken to you, it's felt like a fireside chat, so it's okay.
Thank you, Sharanya. Thank you so much. So let me say that, they also say a single conversation across the table with a wise person is better than 10 years mere study of books. So we are going to condense what Sharanya has learned in her life, her experiences in the next 20-30 minutes, and hope to learn from her what her journey has been. So Sharanya, law runs in your DNA, as does science. Your father is a renowned tax expert, Mr. Lakshmi Kumaran. Your mother is a scientist, Dr. Lakshmi Kumaran. How did you get to do law after biochemistry? How did that switch happen?
Okay, so thank you again for this, and I know you were all expecting a different session, but then now you have to put up with me. Law, I'm a second generation lawyer, so it is my father who did law for the first time in his entire generation. He encouraged his younger brother also to study law. But otherwise, as a family, my father's side family is just a bunch of people who've all done mathematics. They were all forced to do BSc mathematics. That was my father's side family. My mother's side, they're all scientists. So I have my one uncle who's a nuclear physicist,
Wow.
my mother who's a molecular biologist, one uncle who's a cardiologist, and another one who's a cardiac surgeon. So I think that influenced me quite a bit. So what happens is, at home the discussions used to be about science, and I have grown up in my mother's lab. She was a working mother. So I have literally grown up in my father's office or in my mother's lab. We really didn't have concept of nannies. My grandmother was there till I was about 7-8 years old in Delhi to take care. But, that's how it was. So you go to the lab, you see that really does influence us a lot. And so one thing that my parents told both my brother and me was that post-school, don't get into a professional course, right? Do study a subject that you are fond of, right? So that was the idea. And so in that spirit, I chose to do biochemistry. My older brother did physics. So that's really how we got into science. I then, in my final year college, worked in a lab for about 3 months. And though I liked the science, but I didn't see myself in that life of being inside a lab all the time. So that's really why I decided not to pursue science after college.
Right. So we've heard of lab babies. You're a lab baby.
Yeah.
Right. So Sharanya, after that, you've built yourself a career in tax, commercial litigation, insolvency, customs, competition law, so on and so forth. Was there a conscious decision at any point that this is how I want to grow in my career from one subject to another? And how did you go about it?
Okay, so now that you mention all these subjects, it looks like I've done a lot. But to be very honest, in the first 5 years of me working, I only did one subject. I just did customs. So from 2008 till 2013, I have only done one subject, right? And that is something that I firmly believe that one should choose. Even if you can't choose, you can choose any subject. You can do that for the first 4-5 years. And you get a lot of confidence, You know that wherever you go in the world, whatever happens, that is one subject that you will have a good command over. You feel like that's your comfort space. Now I see a lot of people in the first year or second year, they say, oh, I've done many land matters, or I've done many these matters and rent matters, and I don't want to do any more. What happens is, in a course, if you choose, I always suggest, stick to a subject for at least 4-5 years. You see the evolution of the law. You see the evolution. You'll start looking at constitution issues. You will start seeing how there are trends, how the law is being interpreted across different states. So I think there is a lot of value. Then when you pick a new subject, the skill set is the same. It's only the section that changes.
Right.
So then it's easier, I feel, to pick up newer subjects if you have a good grasp over one subject.
Right. I think the panel before us also touched upon this in terms of legal education and how do students choose their USP. So your advice to them would be that you stick to one area of law for at least 5 years?
Yeah, at least 4 to 5 years. You should stick. Definitely. That has always been my advice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Sharanya. So let me kind of swing this the other way. You're also a litigator. How difficult is litigation? One. But how difficult is it to be a woman litigator?
Right. See, litigation is very hard. Okay. I'm not going. It sounds and looks very glamorous. It is not. Okay. It is like giving a board exam every day.
Wow.
Okay, you have to have that level of preparation because it's not even a two-way discussion, it's a three-way discussion because you have prepared the case in a particular manner. There is an opposite counsel who's mostly going to pull out some ace. How you have prepared the matter, how they have prepared the matter, and how the bench is going to understand, appreciate, and perceive the matter. They're all completely uncontrolled pieces of the puzzle. So it's just, you have to be, therefore, prepared for every possible, circumstance. So preparation, even, I'll tell you an anecdote. So I left my firm in 2016 and I joined the chamber of Mr. K.K. Venugopal.
Right.
So for about 8 years, I had only done tax. So from 2008 to 16, I've only done tax. Then I go there, and one day a file came to me. It was a mining matter, and that was, I think, the first time I've touched a mining case. So it came to me, and within 10 minutes, I got to know that the case is getting adjourned. Bench is not sitting the next day. So I had to go in and tell him that, sir, this case is getting adjourned. I did that, and he said, okay, what is the case about? So, in those 10 minutes, for a person who's never touched that law, I explained the best I could. And then he started asking me sections. What is section 9? What is section 14? What is 16? And I was shocked. I didn't know. But then that prepares you that even when you go to take an adjournment in a case,
right,
you should know everything about the case.
Wow.
That is the level of preparation you must have.
I think that sets the benchmark. I was going to ask you, how do you prepare, but you nailed it. prepare it in a way that it is actually happening and not just seeking an adjournment.
Yes, and always you must prepare as if you are going to argue the matter.
Right.
Even if you are briefing, you must always prepare as if you are going to argue the matter, because you don't know when you're going to get your first break in the Supreme Court or in the High Court or before any court.
Right.
And in fact, the first time I actually argued a case in the Supreme Court was when I went to take an adjournment.
Oh.
So this was before Justice Deepak Mishra. It was a matter I had drafted, but that day we moved an adjournment letter because my senior was not available. So I was waiting patiently for my matter to get called out, and my other colleagues had said, don't worry, he's a very sweet judge, he'll give you adjournment. And I got up and, nothing. First time, I said, letter circulated. Then he looks at me. He said, letter circulated? I said, yes. He said, but giving an adjournment is my prerogative. You may ask. So I didn't know what to do. Then he said, okay, tell me the matter. But I had drafted the matter.
Yeah.
So I said, this is what the case is. Then he said, when you know everything, then why are you asking for adjournment? And he issued notice.
Wow.
So you don't know when you're going to get that break. Right? So you must always be prepared.
I see some heads nodding in the audience. I think people are taking note of the fact that yes, you never know when luck strikes.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, speaking of some of the matters, Sharanya, is there a matter which is very close to your heart, maybe in the beginning or now, that is in a way that is a part of you that defined you, or the way that you have been?
Several matters, frankly, and in different forums, right? You'll always remember the first time I appeared before a tribunal, I remember that matter. Now, I look back and I feel that I knew so little about the case. At that time I thought I'd done such a great job and prepared so much. Now I look back, I said, whatever I succeeded that day, but what I took back that day home from the matter was so less, because as you grow older, you see there are so many facets to a case.
Right.
Again, this matter that I was just telling you, it was the RailTel matter, which I did before Justice Deepak Mishra. Again, very, very fond memories, because I think it gave me the confidence. The two other matters, actually, I hold on to matters that I lose more than the matters that, I have succeeded in, very honestly. That hurts more. There was a case, I think 2 years ago, it was, I don't want to name the bench, Supreme Court, and I argued, and it was a very tricky point, and we had not succeeded in the High Court, and calculation was also there, legal issues were there, but I was very solid on the legal interpretation, and I argued. I literally fought with the bench. Okay, then the bench said, okay, file an affidavit, and then I filed an affidavit, did everything, did all the research that was there about that case ever. I went back, again I fought, and then, it got dismissed. But somehow that case, I cannot name the client or the judge, but yes, that was a case where really, if you ask a lot of the lawyers, they will tell you it's the ones that you miss and the ones that you lose that you hold on.
Right. I think that's... I would have said that, let me brush this under the carpet. I never want to go back to a case I've lost. But it's nice to hear that you actually...
It haunts you in your sleep. It doesn't let you sleep, So Mr. Justice K.V. Vishwanathan had once remarked when he was a senior counsel, and we had met him, just like this in court, and he was very, very jovial, and used to sit and chat outside in the waiting area and all. So he said that for a litigating lawyer, the best idea will come when you lose the matter and then you're walking out. You'll get the best idea when you're walking out of the court, when it's already too late.
I think it's, to your point on it being a board exam, I think the best answer comes once you've left
Yes,
the
yes.
examination
You'll remember
hall.
everything.
Everything
Yes.
that you missed writing in your paper, you'll remember then. So
Yes.
yes, of course, interesting. Also, Sharanya, this was supposed to have been a power couple session before. So, although Mr. and Mrs. Lakshmi Kumaran are not here at the moment, we would love to know from you, because we've had a conversation before offline about it. it's very interesting, the couple that they are. And I would really love from you, for you to actually tell us more about them. You know, how similar or different are they as a couple?
Wow, okay. So, I think, again, 10 minutes or 20 minutes are never going to do justice to the extremely wonderful people that they are. First thing is that they're very warm. They're very loving and very warm, okay? Not only to, each other, but to everyone, you know. So while growing up, we had a house, anybody could just walk in. So our office used to be in the first floor and the house used to be in the ground floor. My dadi used to live with us. And there used to be a lot of these, young lawyers and chartered accountants who would have come from some outstation. So my dadi would invite them home first, give them a meal. So our house was always like that. You know, we always had people who would be eating and getting fed in our house. And my mother, of course, really enabled that for us. And she's always been very, very warm and very helpful, as a little too helpful, I feel, and puts herself in very tricky positions after that. They're both extremely intelligent people and extremely focused on their passion, you know. So my mother, for her life really is science. Yeah. We were all just there, you know, like, yeah, okay, I am married, I have a child, but yeah, her life and passion was really science. It still continues to remain so today. She's a patent agent, but her first love is inventions, which is why she sort of so seamlessly moved and she's so good at it. So that is her. Again, she was the absent-minded professor. So when I would go with her to her lab, you know, all her juniors used to come and scare me, you know, and I've been traumatized now. I have some abandonment issues, because they would come and tell me that you better stick to your mother, otherwise she'll forget you in the lab. You know, so I've had horror stories where I thought, you know, she'll put me in the cold room and forget about it and stuff like that. So all of those funny things used to happen. My dad is, again, you know, he's the more emotional one between the two of them. She is more practical, and she gets less affected by things, whereas he's the one who's a little more emotional between the two of them. But you know, growing up, he was just so busy. You know, we would not know where he is. If I didn't get great marks, it was very easy to avoid him, because I would sleep off by 8:30. He would anyway come, I don't know when, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Right. And I just had to make sure that I wake up in time to reach the bus stop. So I would miss him. Like that, I have managed to miss him for about 4-5 days or a week or so, till everything quietens down.
Your strategy mind started working.
Yeah, right then.
Then.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, they're just, but they've been extremely supportive of each other. I've, touch wood, never seen, you know, my parents fight. Yeah. They've been each other's biggest cheerleaders, in public or in private. Even if they disagree, it is done with so much grace and dignity and respect. There'll be no raising of voices. They're both, as I said, you know, one mathematician and one scientist. So things are laid down like A, B, C, D, very logical. Everything is logical.
LHS is equal to RHS.
Yes, absolutely. They're largely equations, mathematical or chemical. But so, you know, you realize that and communication is very strong between them.
Right.
You know, we could never play one against the other. That was just not an option available. You know, very funnily speaking, that, you know, all my school life, I was never allowed to go on any outstation trips. You know, they're very strict. You know, you can't go on outstation trips. I had to be back home by 7 p.m. You know, all of those very, very strict rules. When I was in college and my mother was traveling, and she would always tell me that, check with dad, and dad will say no, dad has said no, you know, and I was very scared of him to sort of go and ask him about this, because then he would ask me about 2 other things in school, then why did this happen, then I said, you know, better not to go on the trip than to, you know, suffer that. Um, but then I was in college, and I was in the music society, and we had to go to BITS Pilani for this thing. So, and mom was not in town, so I sort of gathered all my courage and went to dad, and I said, I have to go. He said, yeah, go. And I was shocked. I said, oh, he's this chill. I didn't know he's so chill. And then I called my mother, and I said, he has already said yes. Now he said, no, now I will not let you go. And so I realized that, all along, she was just using him, but she was the one who prevented me from going on. And I didn't go on that trip finally, I did not.
Okay.
I went to IIT Kanpur the next year, but I did not end up going to Pilani. I really miss it. Yeah.
Great. So that's good, to know about the family. I think we have about 10 minutes before we close, and we'll do this in a rapid fire now.
Okay.
Shradha. So, what is a pet peeve you have when it comes to courtroom or professional etiquettes?
I think I would say lying.
Lying, okay.
Yeah, it's two things. One is lying or faffing, that just simply telling something factually incorrect. Because when the other side or anybody makes a factually incorrect statement, that really, really gets under my skin.
Right.
Yeah.
So isn't that also required when you're building a defense or the other side? There's only one side which is right. The other one has to be...
So, I'll tell you one thing. It's interesting that you say that. Putting the facts correctly is one thing, right? It is still the easiest thing is to defend the truth. And once even if you have bad facts, you have the law, right? And if the law doesn't support you, then you lose. It's really, it has to be that.
Right.
So you may portray it in any way, but I feel that, it should not be portrayed incorrectly. That's my biggest pet peeve.
Lawyers are called liars.
Yes, it's incorrect, we don't lie. We really don't lie. Yeah, should not be lying, yes.
Right. So a trait in others that is a tick off for you other than lying?
Not being prepared. Not being prepared in a case is something that really ticks me off. Using bad language.
Bad language.
Absolutely not acceptable. It could be anybody. In our whole office, you will see nobody ever uses bad language. We don't
By
have...
bad language, you mean bad temperamentally?
Temperamentally, raising your voice, using foul language, while talking to juniors or while discussing, no. Just not allowed.
At first, I thought grammatical errors.
No, grammatical errors, you know what? I've learned to live with it now. And I've learned to be the grammar Nazi myself. Yeah, I feel more comments that I give are more than the law is just, this is passive, this is possessive noun and possessive adjective. That is what I'm doing these days. But yeah.
Great. A go-to method for decompressing?
Decompressing. I don't know. I don't decompress.
Do you sing to decompress?
I should be singing to decompress. And I've realized that I should be using that as
You're
a stress.
You're a trained classical singer.
I am a trained classical singer, but I give concerts.
Okay.
So for me, music is equally stressful because if I have to prepare for a 2-hour concert, and our classical concerts are not one 5-minute song or a medley of songs. It's a good 2-hour. It has to have your alap. You need to have this. You need to explore the rag and all that. So it is difficult. It is difficult, and you have to have innovation on stage. So if I have a concert, that is when I sing. If I don't have a concert coming up, I really don't have time to do riyaz.
Okay.
But then it becomes very stressful. So I should learn, I should find something to decompress.
Right. So, speaking of music, a favorite ghazal of yours?
So, I used to be famous for singing Aaj Jaane Ki Zid Na Karo in college. My favorite one though is either Mohabbat Karne Wale by Mehdi Hassan. Even Farida Khanam has a wonderful version that she has sung. Ranjishi Sahi, of course, that is again an all-time favorite.
Great. Yeah. On that note, Aaj Jaane Ki Zid Na Karo, I wish, we had more time for you to sing it. But now we'll move to questions from the audience. Anyone who'd like to, please?
It's very rare
Oh,
This is the first time I've met in UR.
okay. We are not that rare, yeah.
You're not the opportunities are given. So ma'am, my question was regarding, since I'm a law student, and I also do moot courts, and in moot courts is like a mock court, right? So we have issues, and I'm sure you also divide your entire case into issues. So when you, for example, a cricket player, when he goes for a match, he sees the pitch. The pitch is behaving in a certain way, I have to play in a certain way, the situation is a certain. So when you see an issue, what is it that you first see? Apart from the law, how do you see that this is how I need to tackle this case? Is there any approach? If
Very, very interesting question. Okay. So the first thing, very honestly, the training that I've received, and I would say this is a training I've received more from Mr. Venugopal's chamber, is in the first 2 hours that you receive a brief, are you able to find the pulse of the matter? Usually, there is this one single point which is crucial to your case. Okay, it could either be a factual point or it could be a legal point, right? So usually, I feel the first skill set one needs to have is to see if you have identified that point, you know. Then, when it comes to preparation, you know, I would say there is no single formula. Every case requires its own preparation, but preparation for a Monday or a Friday will be different from a preparation for a regular matter. Okay, and why do I say that? When you are going for an admission day hearing, you must know that the bench is going to give me 2 minutes at the most. I mean, there have been 30-second cases also. So you have to prepare in a way and condense your arguments, and which is why you come back to your single most important point. You have to find that point which is going to push over the case, you know, that day. Usually things like natural justice, you know, hardship, some perversity. So on a Monday or a Friday, you have to look for some very compelling reasons to get that foot in the door. But when you are preparing for a regular hearing matter, but that is not to say that you don't prepare the other arguments. It's just how would you plan to, you know, get your case across on an admission hearing day or the first day when you need a stay, when you need an injunction. The regular hearing days is when you really go into the meat. You prepare. So a good way of doing it is, I'll give you a very big secret. I prepare 2 documents. Okay, one is the list of dates. So the list of dates is very crucial. As you're preparing the list of dates, you look at every annexure that you're reading, right? So, and you mark out your annexure. So preparation of the list of dates is completely unavoidable. You must do it. The second is preparation of an aspect note, which is going to, you know, very quickly give you, you know, what was the date of the, say, either FIR or charge sheet, or in a tax case, you know, or an arbitration case, when was the award made, what is the claim, what is the period. Then break it down further into what is the main dispute in the case, and then these are the 2 judgments I'm going to rely on. These are the 2 judgments on the second proposition. So break it down into propositions. That's how I do it. Yeah. You've taken copious notes now.
He's like Badri again.
Like Badri, yes.
So,
Yeah.
any other question? Yes, please.
Ma'am, I am a law student, so can you tell me how to win the moot court competitions, and when we can't win the moot court competitions, so there is a lot of the anxiety and depression will come, and why no any psychologist department will be in any law college.
Okay, so you're saying that how does one approach a moot court competition? And are you asking about the importance of psychology in college?
My question is that when we go to the moot courts, and 5 times, it's my experience, 5 moot courts I go, and no any moot courts will be win सेकेंड थर्ड्स एंड लॉट ऑफ द एंग्जाइटी एंड डिप्रेशन विल बी कम. यू नो कि मूड कोर्ट्स के अंदर लाख रुपए 2 लाख रुपए की प्राइज होती है, और नहीं जीतने के बाद, इतनी मेहनत करने के बाद एक अंदर से बहुत ही एंग्जाइटीज होती है.
See, mood courts, you have to understand, okay, are only a means to develop a skill set. Okay, it is make believe at the end of the day. That's a hypothetical situation. So you can't get affected so much. Okay, if you're going to get affected by losing a mood court, what will happen to real cases, right? That's on a lighter note. But I have frankly just done one moot court in college. That was just one moot court I attended, because I am from LC2. I'm not even from a 5-year law school. I've done evening law, right? And all my colleagues and my other people, my friends in law college were employees, government employees, and professionals. So we really didn't have a very great concept of moot court. But I just feel it's very issue based. The way I was explaining to him, I would say you prepare for it the same way that you prepare for a regular case, which is go understand the facts and make sure you have enough research. Another very important skill set is, how you present yourself. How confident are you? Speaking slowly actually really helps. Pausing, that gives you time to develop the next sentence if things are not going your way. It gives you time to analyze, whether the judge has processed what you're saying. So I think that is also a very important skill set in life, not just in moot court, but I would say in life, even in general conversations. I would always urge people to just, dheere dheere baat karo. That's all. Yeah.
Right. Vikesh, now we don't have more time, right? Because he has another question.
He has another question. Yeah.
Ma'am, my question is that I read in a IP Leader blog's website, one student from the National Law University Delhi who cracks 10 moot courts to in an international law college, and they hired a top tier 1 law firm directly. मतलब उनकी जो मूड कोर्ट की कंपटीशंस की जो विनिंग जो थी, उसके अकॉर्डिंग उनको टायर 1 की लॉ फर्म के अंदर प्लेसमेंट्स हो गए. सो व्हाट यू कैन टेल, इज इट मैंडेटरी टू मूड कोर्ट्स विनिंग्स फॉर प्लेसमेंट्स एंड लॉट ऑफ द थिंग्स?
See, you're asking a very interesting question. Okay, today as compared to 15 years ago, okay, the number of students that are passing out of law colleges is much more, right? And that puts either your counsel, if you're going for counsel practice, or if you are trying to apply in a law firm, etc., it puts them also in a very difficult situation as to see who is, what have people accomplished, how are we going to select the CVs that come, right? So that's really where it becomes very tricky. I would say writing articles, it's just not moot court, right? If you are not interested in doing litigation, then you not doing moot court is not going to, I feel, impact. But writing articles, being very clear with your concepts, right? Definitely applying for internships. I don't know if moot court is the only way internships are given. There are other ways. You have to understand, you have to do well in academics. There are no two ways about that. If you are in college, you are studying, you have to do well in your academics. Right? Somebody having 5 great moot courts, but not having that kind of CGPA is still not going to get an edge over someone who is a topper, or who is, doing the top 5, who's put out some interesting articles. So you have to have a very holistic approach to this. It's just not one thing that's going to determine this.
Right. We have more questions. It's a popular R.
We veered into now somewhat of a popular terrain.
मैम अगर कोई भी लॉ फर्म की बात कर ले, अगर रही इन बात इंटर्नशिप की आती, आपकी फर्म की बात कर ले, तो उनकी क्राइटेरिया में जो भी आता है सीजीपीए की बात आती है। और बहुत सारी यूनिवर्सिटीज, रही बात सीसीएस यूनिवर्सिटी की बात कर ले, तो इनका हाईएस्ट परसेंटेज 65 जाता है। तो उन बच्चों का क्या होगा जो सीसीएस यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ रहे हैं, एनएलयूज में नहीं पढ़ रहे हैं, उनको आपकी फर्म में इंटर्नशिप कैसे मिलेगा अगर उनके परसेंटेज ही नहीं है तो?
No, it's not a question of just simply percentage, no. I am from LC2. A lot of people who have joined our college are from CLC and Delhi University. You don't get marks.
But
So, it depends from university to university.
अप्लाई करने के लिए तो क्राइटेरिया भी मांगते हैं, आपका वही आपकी परसेंटेज नहीं है, आपको नहीं, तो फिर उन बच्चों का क्या जिनके पास नॉलेज है बट परसेंटेज नहीं है, उनका क्या
So,
होगा?
I would urge that your college, it's important that as a student body, you make a representation and then bring it out. So many times we engage with student bodies or we engage with the placement council of your college. So
मैम
do
कॉलेज भी
that.
कुछ नहीं कर रहा तो बच्चे क्या करें,
Right.
बच्चे कहाँ तक जाएंगे?
So let me
I
put
think
this
that is
another way.
beyond the scope of
Yeah.
today's discussion.
Let me put this another
Yeah.
way, Sharanya.
Yeah.
So from a law firm perspective, what are the three most important things people can write in their cover letter to get a law firm's attention for, getting an internship or recruitment?
I can tell you one thing you should not do.
Yeah.
Okay? Do not, when you are sending these blast emails, okay, say, dear sir/madam. Okay? I can tell you the minute I see an email saying dear sir/madam, I have always appreciated the work that you have. It's very generic. Work you have done in the past so many years. It is an inspiration
It's
to
a
me.
template to
It's a template.
everybody.
I said, you don't even know if I'm sir or madam, then what inspiration have I given, right? So be genuine, be authentic, okay? Another thing we look at, I personally, apart from the academics, okay, if CCS or law school, Delhi Law School gives you only the highest is about 65,
Right.
then mention that.
Yeah.
Mention that you're in the top 5.
Right.
Mention that you're in the top 10. I mean, they are intelligent people sitting on the other side, right? They are
Convert
not
it into
robots.
A percentile.
Yeah.
And you can do that.
Say, I'm in the top 5. This is my rank. You will get a rank. Give your rank, right? But don't have this attitude that the 5-year law school students have an edge over me. Don't have that, because eventually in court, everybody is equal. There is no difference. If you're able to work on your speaking skills, you're able to work on your legal knowledge, and you're able to communicate, that's all that matters. So I would say these 2-3 things. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharanya.
I think we have
One more
yes.
question. Yes, please.
I'm sorry, I think the next panel is waiting. I'm feeling very guilty. I'm sorry. Please chat along.
Good afternoon, everyone. From these point of views and from the yesterday conversations also, I've come to know, I feel somehow that people, the students, law students are inclined more towards the law firms. Why don't they want to create their own law firms and become more successful and open their own law firms? Why you are just trying to go, is there any kind of, you can say, it's not, some subjects should be added into the law curriculum by which we can make more and more leaders instead of they just following more and more law firms. And this is my basic question, because this is the confidence boost which will give to these students also. And
No, sir, I
on.
think what you're saying is a very interesting point.
Yeah.
Okay. And I personally feel that over the next, see, we are looking at a very, the way we have an influx of law students over the last 20 years has really changed. How law as a career was perceived, even when I was in school, there were a total of 10 people who decided after school to take a law exam, right? So from my school, I have very few people who went into law. This I'm talking about 2000, 2001, 2000, 2001 to 2003 types. Even lesser in 90s. What was all my seniors used to say that law is that profession, if you don't get anything else, you go for law, right? That was the profession. So what happened? The number of people entering the field was very, very less. Okay. Even then, the competition was high because very few people end up making it very big. Now, today, why is there also a rush for getting into a law firm? I don't say that is good or that is bad. I am nobody to comment, right? Because I do not know what pressure that particular student is under. So we should never judge when somebody says, I would prefer to go to a law firm. But you have to also understand that these are the same students whose friends have done engineering, whose friends have done MBA, who are doing medicine. They have a very fixed career path, right? They know that I have done a professional course. At the end of this, I will go to a TCS or Infosys. Then I will get my starting salary. What are MBA courses teaching? I didn't tell you, but my mother made me write the CAT exam also. I cleared also. I got some agribusiness interview at IIM Ahmedabad also. I got that, yeah. I luckily didn't clear the interview, but what I learnt, I found it very strange during the interview preps that I would attend, is that they were telling the students, who are applying to IIM Ahmedabad, it was being drilled into their minds, make sure you don't stay in a job for more than 2 years.
Oh, that's
It was
interesting.
being drilled. I was very surprised but these are their friends, right? My friends who went into IIM Ahmedabad or whichever MBA had this psyche drilled into them that you should not stay in any subject in your company for more than 2 years. Whatever is there, you will learn in 2 years. I hear the same thing from students and from associates or my other counsels who's juniors. They say, "Ma'am, 2 saal kar liya, jo seekhna tha seekh liya." I'm shocked. Abhi bhi I don't know tax. I'm so uncomfortable. My colleague wants me to do an income tax matter. I've said, no, I'm very scared. I don't know. I have not prepared. Tomorrow he says, no. I said, no, I will assist you. Even now, I have that kind of underconfidence. But I do have students and my own associates or other people say, 2 saal mein ma'am jo seekhna tha seekh liya. So there are a lot of things that go into it. I feel another 10-15 years, we will see this settle. So we are all seeing a very interesting turn in a phase, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you very
Sharanya.
much.
What
Thank
a lovely
you.
conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It has truly been a pleasure to have you here. And I would like to especially thank Vidyutsav and Lakshmi Kumar Sridharan for bringing in Sharanya, ma'am. And I don't think we oftenly get these people so openly and to interact with them and to learn from their experiences. It has truly been a pleasure. Now I would like to invite Vikesh Dhyani sir to present both of you with a memento. Give them a huge round of applause. Thank you so much, ma'am.